This is Michael Che on Saturday Night Live Weekend Update.
All right. Playing right now. Let me know if you have audio.
Israel is reporting that they vaccinated half of their population. And I'm going to guess it's the Jewish half.
Okay, so that's it.
That was it.
That was the joke.
That was the entire thing that got So how many seconds was that? That was like...
It's just a few seconds.
Yeah, one more time.
Yeah.
Because I can't believe how fast it went by. Like, for the people who missed it, one more time.
Yeah.
Israel is reporting that they vaccinated half of their population. And I'm going to guess it's the Jewish half.
Okay.
So yeah, this was a joke. And this clearly, again, I think most people just took it as a joke. Most people were okay with it, but there was a significant vocal minority that came out and they were outraged at a joke. Again, and this is a joke. Obviously, it's an exaggeration. Israel does have a 20% Arab population, and 44% of them have been vaccinated too. But that's not what he was getting at. He was indirectly and satirically pointing out that in Israel and Palestine, 50% of the population, right, it lives under occupation. Okay, still, even if it's not like settlers and everything, like in Gaza, there's no settlements and everything, but they're both occupied territories, like Gaza and the West Bank. So what happens in that population? Even Amnesty International has put out a statement, saying that Israel has not been vaccinating the people who are actually under its own rule, and that was his point.
All right, Liz, can you provide some context first? Because Israel has been right now one of the leading countries in vaccinating.
Very good, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, in fact, have been very, very impressive at how fast Israel has gotten to vaccinating half of its population. Like, people are like, it's been very impressive. Okay.
Yeah.
So this has become like a pro-Israel promotion that, look, we're ahead. Half of the population has been vaccinated. So here's the thing, though, that there's two ways we could go about this, whether it is anti-Semitic or is it not. But whether this is accurate or is it not, right? Because the people who want to point out that this joke is not correct. So the joke is like, oh yeah, you vaccinated half of your population, probably the Jewish half. I mean, nobody, if you want to be, I don't think like jokes are supposed to be 100% literally accurate for them to make a point. But even some people are saying that, well, this is accurate, right? So we're not even right now talking about whether this is anti-Semitic or not. But the people who are saying this is ridiculous are the people who are saying that, look, actually, if you pay attention to what's happening, the 20% population of Israel who's Arab, who have Israeli citizenship, they're getting the vaccine as fast as the Jewish citizens of Israel, right? So that should be for all the people who say that Israel is a racist ethno-state or whatever. If that was the case, why are the Arabs are getting vaccinated as fast in Israel as the Jewish ones? So they're saying not only this joke is not accurate, if you actually look at what's happening, it should be an indication that Israel is not racist, okay? So the counter to that is what you said, Ellie, that actually we're not talking about Israeli citizens, Arab Israeli citizens. We're talking about the Palestinians who are not getting any vaccines. Like, I think it's been really bad, okay? So for Palestinians, they have been getting under, like, I mean, I don't know, what last time I checked was like 2,000 for a population of how many million? How much was it? Like, I don't remember the numbers, but it was ridiculously small, okay?
Well below half.
Oh no! Oh no! Yeah,
Well.
no, not even. No, like saying half is like it's basically Israel is one of, like, if you look at Israel, it's one of the leading countries when it comes to percentage of vaccination. When you look at Palestine, is one of the worst right now. Okay, I don't. So you could get very technical about the joke because the joke is technically not accurate because the Palestinians are not Israelis, right? So when the joke is saying, I'm guessing it's the Jewish half, and people are like, well, it's accurate because if you add all the Palestinians, it does end up actually being 50% not being vaccinated. But people are like, well, they're not Israeli. Like, people say, like, wait a minute, why would the Israeli government be responsible for citizens of another nation? Like, so that would be the comeback. Like, they're responsible for, like, look, when it comes to citizens of Israel, they are not being prejudiced when it comes to Jewish or Arab. Now, if you're talking about Palestine, well, that's another country. Why would they need to be responsible for their vaccination the same way that they're responsible for their own citizens? So what do we say?
They're also here's this is the downside of that, is that they have taken responsibility for their air control. They've taken responsibility for their borders. They've taken responsibility for a lot of the laws and a lot of the law enforcement and the military aspects and the police force and everything else in those occupied territories. So they are responsible for all of those things because they want to be. It's occupied territory. So if they have that and they actually can control what vaccines come in and go out and so on, then they should be responsible for this too. And that's the Amnesty International position. So I'm going to actually send you this link. I don't know if you want to share it, Armin.
Well, okay. So here's the thing. So there's a lot of criticism on Israel because Israel has been blocking medicine even before this whole, to a lot of this has a history, right? Mm-hmm. And there are reports that Israel is using vaccines as a bargaining chip against the Palestinians and stuff like that. So that can be criticized. And as you said, if you are an occupying force, you do have some responsibilities to the occupied territory. In fact, it's a Geneva Convention, Article 56, I think, that says occupying powers are responsible for medical supplies of the occupied population, including adoption and application of the I don't know how to say this one, and preventive measures necessary to combat the spread of contagious diseases and epidemic to the fullest extent of the means available to it. So based on that, you could say that, and I believe Israel is a signatory to the Geneva Conventions, and based on that, they're basically violating human rights, international human rights, right? By not letting the vaccines get in or not supplying. Yep.
And one thing I'm going to add to that, the settlers, Israeli settlers living in the West Bank, are being vaccinated. They're under the Israeli plan, right?
Yeah, but they are citizens.
They're citizens. They're included, but they are in the. So it's not just like within the occupied territory. They are actually distributing vaccines in the settlement. So then there's that's where the apartheid argument comes in. So a lot of people are bringing in this word apartheid, that this is sort of reinforcing this impression that there is an apartheid there.
Right. So I'm going to get very technical. Okay. So yes, what you're pointing out is that Israel is making sure that even in the occupied territory, like West Bank, the vaccines are getting to people as long as they're Israeli citizen, right? So I'm hearing echo. I'm not sure if it's just me or live chat. Please tell me. Yeah, but yeah, okay. Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
It's okay though. I don't think it's coming out in the stream.
Okay. So, but these are now, if you get really technical about this, okay, you could say that Israel is in violation of the Geneva Convention by not supplying to vaccines to Palestinians. However, the joke will still be inaccurate, and I know I'm being very picky about this, because the joke implies there's racism involved. Okay, so even if Israel is at fault for not providing vaccines to Palestinians, okay, the fact that they are providing vaccines to Arab Israelis but not to Palestinians, again, this, you could argue that this is a violation of the Geneva Conventions, but the joke implies there was something racist going on here. This might still be bad, but not in a racist way bad. You know what I mean? Because this might be Israeli versus Palestinian bad versus not Arab versus Jewish versus Arab bad. Because if you're an Israeli, you get your vaccines.
Yeah, but I mean, so again, we're going into the details of it, and we're trying to like take and nitpicking apart the joke.
I know,
and we will get beyond the joke and talk about just generally what is when is criticizing Israel anti-Semitic and when it's not. But it's a bigger thing than that. Like the whole idea is that Israel considers itself a Jewish state, right? And it considers itself a democracy. It considers itself a Jewish state and a democracy. Now, it is a democracy, but it is also occupying half of the population. If you look at Israel and the Palestinian territories as one unit, then it's basically half of its population, 5 million people or more, are under occupation, right? Are under illegal rule. So, and if all of them were given the vote, if all of them were able to vote, it wouldn't be a Jewish state anymore, but it would be a democracy. But if they don't get the vote, it remains a Jewish state, but it's not a democracy anymore. So I think that is the general idea behind when people talk about there's a preference for Jews in Israel. So the same kind of thing happens with them. If you look at Israel's marriage laws, I mean, we know that there is a discriminatory policy sometimes even against Arab Israelis, although Arab Israelis are generally a lot happier than Arabs in other states. So I'll definitely give them that. But there are some discriminatory policies within that, even against the Arabs. So it's a complicated kind of thing. Obviously, it's a complicated situation. It's one of the most complicated conflicts in the world. It's a very complicated conflict over something really, really simple and dumb, of course, but it is a complicated conflict, right? So any you made is not going to, if you're going to joke about it in 7 seconds, is definitely going to be a whole bunch of people who will be very upset about it. And there'll be other people who will look at the meaning behind it, and you can find whatever you want.
Hey guys, if you want to join these streams live, get your comments and questions read by Ali and Armin and the guests, and most importantly, to get full access to the full video versions of all these episodes, become a patron. Link in the description below.